Today we turn in our Revised Common Lectionary, this schedule of scriptures, both Hebrew and Christian, that Christian churches throughout the world agree to follow this cycle. So we are joining with countless millions worldwide as we look at the book of Joshua. And at this crucial time, when the Israelites had made their way through their days of wandering in the wilderness, after they have been led by Moses out of Egypt, and now they are entering a place where they can live in promise and hope. And the first challenge of their young new leader, now that Moses has died, Joshua challenges them. Now therefore revere the Lord and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day then whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are now dwelling. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. With these landmark words, Joshua challenged them to renew the covenant, the promise, the relationship with their God. That their God would not be simply traditions of ritual or religious formality, or even the religions that they had known in Egypt, which were quite profound in their ancient wisdom. But it was time for them to choose, as their own people, whom they would serve. So they were serving the Lord their God, who had led them out of captivity, out of the wilderness, and to a place of plenty and promise. This is a rather symbolic and elaborate way of reminding us to choose each and every day, even every hour, if you will, whom will you serve? The living Spirit of God sustaining you this very day? Or will you simply rehearse old customs and patterns of behavior that you've known from your youth? I saw a wonderful commercial this week on TV. You know, we can learn a lot from commercial, not just about what products to buy, but sometimes they have great pearls of wisdom hidden. And it was actually, the context was an advertisement for a new series. I'm not familiar with it. But the mother had the little child sitting up in the bed, and they were talking about the great things of life. And the little girl said, "Tooth fairy?" And the mother said, "Made up." "Easter bunny?" "Made up." "Santa Claus?" "Made up." "God?" "Ah, now God is real." Well, the point of the story was, here we have the child and the adult. We each have our ways of what we consider to be real and made up. But even the make-believe can be powerful in our soul of feelings and thoughts and ideas and hopes and dreams. So I invite you, as we conclude our journey through the wonderful land of Oz today, that you choose again, like the Israelites. What is the spirit that you will serve? A spirit that always helps you to see the possible, the true, the good, The spirit that helps you recognize what human beings can accomplish in cooperation as opposed to competition. Or the spirit that inspired my late mother, that taught me so much, to have eyes of youthful wonder, even into her 90s, always looking for what good might come. She used to tell our Unity study group, "Well, you seem to worry about so many different things." She said, "I quit worrying a long time ago," because she went through the Depression. She went through world wars, born in World War I, went through World War II as an adult. And she said, "I learned a long time ago that there would be challenges." There were times in St. Louis where I don't think as a young woman she quite knew where her next meal was coming from. She knew there would be challenges, but she said, "I just knew every day God would give me the strength, the capacity to meet the need." Now, she wasn't raised in Unity, folks. We were in the Baptist church. They can be great positive thinkers as well. These ideas that Unity teaches, the Fillmores always said, we do not own these. All we are doing is sharing how the divine, eternal ideas of God were productive in our lives and how they can help you too. But we didn't invent them. They aren't make-believe. They are lasting because they are of God. Now, I promised in the description of this last lesson that we would look at every tiny detail of all the 14 books that Frank Baum wrote in this series. Larry's getting real nervous now. I can tell. No, we can only hit a highlight or two. And just a suggestive idea. I cannot tell the whole story in our time that is allotted. Frank Baum had such great success with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which was printed in 1900. It was the most elaborately produced American book for children to that point, filled with beautiful color plates describing the characters and landscapes of the land of Oz. Nobody had ever seen such a lavish production. After all, it was just for, children. It was a beautiful, inspiring book. Consequently, it was highly successful, and as a result, children kept writing to Mr. Baum, "Tell us more, tell us more." And it took him about 4 years to write the second book, but then they began to come out more often, and he completed a total of 14 before he died in the year 1919. Some of you joined us recently on movie night when we saw the Walt Disney production of 1992 called Return to Oz. Now, that's not a name of any of the books, but what they did was give that name to the movie, which was Book 2 and Book 3 mushed together, as movie producers like to do, kind of smash it together. So it gave some of the details of the continuing story. The most significant detail in that film and in actually Book 3 is the fact that Dorothy, after her great journeys in Oz, returning to Kansas, and then she's in Oz for a second time, she discovers the beautiful Princess Ozma, who had been hidden away from the beginning of the legend. And she happened to be about Dorothy's age. Well, by the end of Book 3 and in the film, we discovered as we watched it last week that Dorothy met her higher self, her true self. Princess Ozma, who is known as the rightful ruler of the land of Oz. She was the rightful ruler, was actually a higher self or a higher realization in the spiritual realm of Dorothy herself. Dorothy also says something very interesting toward the end of the film, and Disney very subtly suggests it. Remember how Dorothy used the power of the ruby slippers, clicking the heels together, and it took her back home to Kansas the first time? Well, in this next film and next book, she's wearing the slippers again. You see, the slippers are shod on her feet. And we know from our unity teaching and also from theosophy that the feet represent understanding, and by extension, what we call in unity consciousness, our awareness. So these magical shoes were showing the power of Dorothy's evolving consciousness or awareness of truth. And they empowered her through all of these mysterious journeys. Well, toward the end of this film, she's saying goodbye for the second time to her beloved friends, and now this mysterious, beautiful Princess Ozma. Dorothy just recognizes not just a friendship, not just a sisterhood, a real identity. And she's torn about going back home for the second time to Kansas. And she makes the statement, I wish I could be in both worlds at once. And I appreciate the director of the movie because the camera just very gently panned to the floor. And as she said those words, the magical slippers just slightly increased their glow. Something happened. She didn't consciously click them, the heels together, but they did their own work. And then Ozma said, it shall be so. So from this point on in the legend, Dorothy has now spiritually evolved to the point that she can dwell in both realms. The earthly realm of Kansas, where we do our deeds, where we live our daily lives, where we have our communities. But Dorothy also has instant and unlimited access spiritually through her consciousness, her mind. She can instantly remember Oz, its possibilities, its power, its magic, that she can appropriate in an instant to meet her needs here on earth. She's now a dweller of two worlds. And you see, that's what we are. That's what our unity teaching has always said. We are a human divine being. We are a divine idea in the mind of God. Charles Fillmore used to love his great hyphenated word. I like it because it sounds German, and I like German language. He'd hyphenate all these words together like German language does and make this whopper of a word. That we were each the perfect idea of man in the mind of God. In other words, God is thinking Karen. God thought Karen into existence. This is what we mean when we make an affirmation such as we did in prayer time, that I honor and express God. Karen is an expression of God or life. Now, as I mentioned last week, as a co-creator, she has to make the free choice of will to cooperate with that perfect idea of her being in the mind of God, her spiritual self, her higher self, to cooperate with that in the choices that she makes in this world, in how she's going to treat Reverend Stacey this Sunday, in what she's going to do through her business, in how she's going to interact with her neighbors at the lake. All the choices that we each make every day can be, should be, guided by the truth of who we are in the mind of God. Now, perhaps that sounds way up here and not very practical. Nothing could be more practical than to say, if Jackie has a challenge with her neighbor, for example, and she goes next door, knocks on the door, and gives her neighbor a piece of her mind. Now, she didn't do this. I'm making it up. But should she choose to do that, and she was harsh, critical, judgmental of her neighbor, would that be expressing the truth of what Jackie is as a thought of God? No. For Jackie to deal with her neighbor compassionately, creatively, and still acknowledging her value. So if she has a neighbor where some boundaries have to be set, that's wholly appropriate. This is not about being a doormat for your neighbor or your boss at work. Oh, whatever you say, walk all over me. That's not what it's about. It's about standing in your truth, honoring yourself and honoring the other individual as well. So in our stories in Oz, one of the principles that Dorothy has now come in her evolution and through the story can model for us is this ability to live in two realms. We do it all the time. Our practice of prayer and meditation is always about this. I was thinking when we sang our opening song, Great is the Lord, the second song, I commit my hand into your life. Many people ask me as a unity minister, well, sometimes unity just sounds like we're supposed to be milk toast. I give up, God, you do everything, you take care of everything. No, it isn't. We teach that we're co-creators, we're highly responsible. But when we sing a song like that or hold a prayer, it's like Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane when he took the cup and he knew that he was going to face a crucifixion, a death, and said, God, I would rather not do this. But if it is your will, if much can be accomplished for humanity, I will walk this path. So when we take an affirmative statement of surrender to God, what we're saying is I am willing to stand still, to be silent, to listen through prayer and meditation to your inner voice and guidance, and then I will take action on that in the world. You know that beloved statement, God helps those who help themselves. In other words, God gives us the idea, then we make something of it. We say every week our Lord's Prayer, don't we, as a model prayer. You give us this day our daily bread. There's an early translation of that, actually coming out of the Latin Bible. You give us this day tomorrow's bread. What could that possibly mean? You give us this day tomorrow's bread. You give us this day the idea and ability to make tomorrow's bread. It's teaching us that God gives us the principle, as Dorothy might say, the magic, to now take powerful action, creative action. Well, enough about Dorothy. The thing about spiritual evolution or growth of any kind is it's not just about you. or about you, Jackie. You inspire, influence, radiate to others. So what happens in the Oz books? Well, after we get through quite a few of them, we find out that Dorothy's Aunt Em and Uncle Henry go to live in Oz. Now, what does this mean? Now, remember, they were totally earthbound. In the beginning of the first book, Baum tells us that Dorothy, when she would laugh, as a little girl would do, it would actually frighten Aunt Em, because Aunt Em didn't even know how to smile. And she was actually scared of this little girl when she came to live with them. She couldn't see how this child could find anything in that bleak wilderness of Kansas, as it's described. She couldn't find anything to laugh about. But Dorothy naturally did. So Emily and Henry were earthbound. They had no conception of this land of possibility, this spiritual realm that could inspire their work here on earth. But after many volumes of the story, we find that they've gone to dwell in Oz. A symbolic way of the author telling us that Dorothy's spiritual evolution had inspired a change in her aunt and uncle, that they too now could work creatively from the realm of ideas. And in the book, they're described as teaching the people in the land of Oz new productive ways of farming, of course, their life. But this is a way of showing that Aunt Em and Uncle Henry were learning from the spiritual realm new and productive ways to do their own farming because they still existed in Kansas. So they too were now dwelling in these two worlds. Jean Houston, an author, philosopher, visionary, wrote in her book, The Wizard of Us, the following: Dorothy returns to Kansas after her adventure in Oz as what Joseph Campbell described as one who can walk between two worlds. She has learned that she is much more than a frustrated farm girl. She is now a hero who has traveled far and risked everything, returning home as an entirely different person. And because Dorothy's journey is also your journey, you can understand, as she did, that we all carry everything we need inside ourselves. We're the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion, loaded with a fully activated brain, heart, and courage. We are also Toto, the active life force, so beautifully portrayed by that little dog, faithfully prodding us on with gusto. Go, go! And, Jean Houston describes, we are also at times the naughty ones, the witches and the flying monkeys that swarm in occasionally to keep us sharp. Choose now whom you will serve, to keep us sharp and keep things interesting. So Dorothy has shown us something that another author of the time, T.S. Eliot, wrote, and I paraphrase, that through all our wanderings, we can return to where we started and know the place, the home for the first time. So the time has come that we have to close this magical book of Oz. There's much promise there. And as I said in the beginning about that commercial and the mother explaining to her child the many symbols and legends in our world, from Easter bunnies to tooth fairies, that are just make-believe. but God is real. Because that was what is important to that mother. But to that child, the Easter Bunny might be quite real. Now, I was very wise as a child, and so I approached my mother and explained to her, Santa Claus is real. But I know that Easter Bunny's made up, because no bunny could stand there and hold those big gift baskets on those little paws. So choose whom you will serve. You do it. You already make choices. We all make choices in our life whom we will serve. But it is good to continually make that choice again. And we do that each time that we enter prayer and meditation. So I invite you to join me in a time of inner choosing and receiving the promise of guidance in the silence. We affirm this truth in the very center of our being. I have instant, unlimited access to my higher self, the I am, the individuality created in the mind of God. Within me is the essence of the infinite. How often we enter a quiet time with many demands, many questions upon our heart, a whole laundry list of what we want God to do for us or for another. But the true essence of prayer is the willingness to stop, to cease from outer activity, and with a heart filled with devotion and reverence, to turn to the very essence of our being. In unity, we use those magic words, I am. My very existence in this world is a testament of God's infinite love. That I may have the opportunity in this beautiful classroom earth to follow my own path of discovery, that there are always good companions along the way, many adventures, and even obstacles in my path that as I climb over that obstacle, I learn new skills. I learn new powers. For good, God will always show me a way through, around, or underneath. For wise spiritual teachers have said the one thing I can be sure of: life does not end. It may change form. It may walk many different roads, but it forever leads home. Home that is a connection, a oneness, a living in the very heart of the universe. living in the perfect heart of God. And so as we rest in the silence, as long as we are choosing, open and receptive, willing to listen, the Spirit of Truth always speaks to us, gives an indication of a new way, opens our soul to new possibilities. And so we rest. In the truth of self, I am a human, divine being. And now for each and every one, the impulse of Christ, the Spirit of Truth, the music within us may be expressed differently. But it is somewhat like this. You're out of the woods. You're out of the dark. You're out of the night. Step into the sun. Step into the light. Keep straight ahead for the most glorious place on the face of the earth and sky. Hold on to your breath. Hold on to your heart. Hold on to your hope. March up to the gate and bid it open. Step into the sun. Step into the light of life. And so gradually, we allow our awareness to move once again to our place in this earthly world, to fill our physical senses, and as we're ready, we open our eyes. But that truth, or even make-believe, if you wish to call it that, has inspired you inwardly, and you can now use it as your guide this very day, perhaps even in this very hour. And so we say, Hallelujah, Amen. Thanks be